about problems and issues and challenges and think collectively about how perhaps could some of these issues be improved. But we didn't run our organization the way you run a town council. And I think that's really the gist of what the Attorney General was saying, that when you have a town government, a town council, everything is in the public eye. Every single discussion among the town council must be in a public setting. It must be all available for people to come in. And we weren't doing that. We didn't think we needed to do that. All of us had advisory opinions from our own town attorneys that we weren't a public body. And so it's regrettable that we've ended up in this situation because we acted for many, many years under a certain assumption, which turned out to be not the case. And certainly, once this decision is enunciated, as it was, as we said in May, we understand that. We understand clearly that we have to do things differently. However, we're not set up to really operate like a town council. We don't have a website. We don't have a town hall. We don't have a FOIA coordinator. We don't have a FOIA portal. We don't have a lot of resources to hire attorneys to advise us on an ongoing basis. We had, as I said, a rather small budget. Perhaps in the future, something could be done differently, but I don't believe the way we've been structured meets the test of what the Attorney General said. And so I'm uncomfortable proceeding under the current arrangement. And I think that's really the matter that's before us. Does the current structure, the current arrangement as an informal association, unincorporated association, meet the test of what the Attorney General's office has said with the budget that we've allocated from our respective town councils? I don't think it does. And so I think my vote would be to disband the organization as of December 31st, 2024. And in all honesty with you, I don't think, as soon as the complaint was filed by Mr. Binns back in April, I think for all intents and purposes, we haven't been acting the way we were before. So it's been rather a long time, April, since we've been operating as closely and as frequently as we did before. The mayors were put a lot of work into this, monitoring everything that's going on related to coastal affairs at the federal level, state level, county level, and we're not doing that in the same way as we used to. That's a shame. I think that this group of individuals who play a key role in each of their towns are no longer doing that as intensely as they were before. But be that as it may, maybe we'll have another opportunity in the future to do that. And we'll see what transpires. Certainly anything we do going forward, I think, has to be discussed with our town councils. They have to have a full appreciation of what it would mean differently for us. We have to understand that so that we're able to comply.
I think it's been viewed, and I mean, I'm a newbie here, but from my view of this, it's been viewed that ACT was similar to the Sussex County Association of Towns or the Delaware League of Local Government or the numerous other organizations of, directors of the state police or whatever, all of which, as I understand it, don't fall within FOIA, and they function perfectly fine, and they're advisory type of groups, which is exploratory and advisory, which is what ACT has served as.
Well, I think if I could just follow, and I don't mean to take up all the airtime if the other mayors want to join in. I think, being a mayor is an important responsibility, and certainly it's a significant role. Primarily, you're responsible for helping to shape the agendas of the town council meetings and being the presiding officer. And you may have signatory responsibilities, and you are the person that mostly interacts externally and works with other colleagues and other levels of government. But mayors really don't have that much more authority than other town council members. And we as mayors are not empowered to make decisions for our towns. Decisions are always made within the town councils by a majority vote. And so whatever we do we're kind of the eyes and ears of our towns, our town councils, and we're taking issues back to them. And ultimately, if any decision is made, any real commitment on the part of a town, it comes from a town council. It doesn't come from the mayors.
Anybody
Yeah.
else? Any other comments?
Mayor Mills here.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Stan.
Mayor Stan Mills here. Joni, very, very well said. I agree with everything you said. You know, interestingly to me, at least, is that this ACT group we are in is the second iteration. Prior to all of us coming on board as mayors, there was another original ACT, which also had some kind of demise, and there was some period of time in between their demise and this new one being formed. I don't know why they had a demise, but I just find that interesting. So for me, after operating for years under the guidance from multiple municipal attorneys, obviously I was disappointed with the ruling by the Attorney General that we are a public body, but I'm resigned to abiding by such ruling. However, I'm also ready to step back from ACT and allow more time to evaluate membership and to consider if a restart is in the cards. So I would, like you, Joni, I would be voting to support the motion to dissolve ACT.
Any other?
Speak?
Any other?
Yeah, I have some
Certainly.
comments. Natalie Magdeburger on behalf of Fenwick Island. First of all, I saw this on the agenda for the first time when you posted the agenda. And I saw that the background that was referenced on the agenda, I think it's a misstatement of the actual background. And I'm bringing, and I'll give you both a copy of the order from the AG's office.
I've got it right here.
Okay. Thank you. Sure. So the AG's office actually found that ACT was a formal organization. There would be no need to reconstitute it because it was already a formal organization. What the DOJ also found that as a formal organization, that there had been FOIA violations. They could only go back 6 months. So they didn't go back or couldn't go back by statute to the earlier, but it all involved discussions that were going on with U.S. Wind by members of ACT. The DOJ order found, in fact, that there was a violation of FOIA, that those discussions should not have gone forward without public scrutiny and public information. In quoting what they found is that ACT was a public body, that it was subject to FOIA. It was supported by taxpayer dollars, your dollars, my dollars. And they recommended that ACT and the U.S. Wind Company discuss the items considered in the non-compliant meetings that were found to be in violation, ratify any votes taken at a future meeting held in compliance with FOIA's open meeting requirements. If minutes exist or any meetings have been recorded or otherwise preserved, it is recommended that ACT make available those existing minutes or use the available meeting materials to create minutes compliant with Section 1004F. Additionally, it is recommended that ACT appoint a FOIA coordinator, implement a FOIA request policy in accordance with FOIA statute, and create an online portal for accepting FOIA requests. In other words, the DOJ was saying those meetings that they found to be non-compliant, which only could go back 6 months, to that point to about December of 2023, needed to have minutes done. I have since been receiving from numerous different folks, I guess, that have filed FOIA requests, and I'll give you a copy of some of the pertinent documents I've gotten. Okay. I've now seen the documents. I was not privy to these documents prior to Mr. Bentz filing his FOIA complaint. But as a part of that complaint, I received documents. I've since then received documents from all sorts of folks who are coming to Fenwick Island because I was the one that said, this isn't right. And I said that because when I read the documents, there were a number of documents that were very concerning to me because I participated in ACT with full faith that everyone would do the right thing. I understood that there was discussions going on with US Wind, with a consultant that was retained by ACT for both technical assistance as well as assistance to, and I read from her contract, to explore how ACT can position itself to take advantage of the potential community benefits and assess whether any towns are a preferred site for both cable connections. This was a contract that was signed in August of 2022.
Do we need to go back through all these?
I do. I'd like to have my statement heard, sir. I'd like to have my statement heard.
Well,
now, as part of these documents, what you'll see is that the talking points that were to be set forth on behalf of ACT was number one, a confidentiality important for ACT. Number two, that RAMS, that's the name of the consultant, participation as a technical consultant to ACT. That Fenwick Island decided not to participate in this process and as a result will not receive any potential community benefits discussed with ACT. And number four, what is US Wind prepared to offer the Delaware coastal towns for a host community benefit?
Well, this
give us
is
a
not,
range.
I mean, what we have on the agenda
Sir, it is.
to discuss the dissolving,
You are
which is not to
you are
discuss
interfering
or any of
with,
this.
point of order, you are interfering with my statement. Will you give us a range of what is possible? So this is what was going on behind the scenes. At the very first meeting, this was presented to me by then ACT President Tim Saxton. And in that course of that meeting, I felt that the intent was to intimidate and bully me into agreeing to it. I told them that I wanted to bring it back to our town council, and I did in fact bring it back to our town council for a public vote. Fenwick Island decided that they were not going to participate in the retention of Bonnie Ram as a consultant to work with US Wind, and that furthermore, we did not want our dues associated with that to ACT. Things went forward from there. What was particularly concerning to me when I saw the documents, and it includes the contract and the points, is that in February of 2023, when ACT was then being, the president of ACT was Mayor Bill Stevens, I asked Mr. Stevens to put on the agenda a discussion with Mayor Meehan from Ocean City, specifically that there were 30 mayors in New Jersey who were calling for a moratorium on all offshore wind activity concerning the recent whale deaths. I asked for that to go on the agenda, and Mr. Stevens, in keeping with his role as president of ACT, sent me an email back acknowledging it and said, I think the case you could argue is what is the harm in doing so and discussing that moratorium, of which I said yes. Unbeknownst to me, thereafter, US Wind, Mike Dunmeyer, who is the lead liaison, sent an email to both Tim Saxton and Joni Reich. And in the email, he indicated some concern about the fact that I'd asked that to be placed on the agenda. Thereafter, there was a series of emails and ultimately a phone call between Mayor Reich, Mayor Saxton, and Mayor Stevens. The meeting went forward, and that issue then was basically not moved forward. And in response, there was an email that came from Mike Dunmeyer at US Wind that wrote, I hope you had a great weekend. And this was to Mayor Saxton and Mayor Reich. First, thank you for your response to the ACT issue last week. I really appreciate your engagement before the meeting and the approach you took in the meeting. Second, I recognize that the public tactics used by Fenwick likely puts you in a difficult position that hasn't been helped by US Wind's delays in our discussions. And thereafter, he talks about starting up the community benefits discussions for money. Now,
I just want to point out that this is not on the agenda. What you're talking about is not on the agenda.
No, it absolutely is, because I'm giving my discussion on the motion to dissolve ACT. Now,
Okay.
that was not in compliance with.
I don't see it on the agenda.
It is absolutely, it's your agenda, what we're talking about, dissolving
Agenda is
act.
the possible
So,
dissolution.
no, it's not, sir. And I'd ask again, a point of order that you let me speak.
I will let you
Now-
speak, but I want to point out that this is not on the agenda.
It is on the agenda. Now, at the end of the day, what you'll see when you go through these documents, and I encourage anyone to look through all these documents, that there is ongoing desire to keep information regarding the community benefits discussions confidential. There's an email that goes back and forth in June, I believe. And I'll get it. You'll go to the pages that I have. There's an email.
Natalie, what is your point?
I'm going to get to my point.
Okay.
And let me finish. I did not interrupt you, and
All right.
I'd ask for the
I
same
just-
courtesy.
Maybe you could
I'd ask for the
summarize.
same courtesy. There's an email that goes back and forth in June of 2023. So after the time that I asked to have the event on the moratorium between Mayor Reich and Mike Dunmeyer. Mr. Dunmeyer from US Wind talks about the discussions that they're going to have, and then says, as far as how the information about our discussion should become public and the timing of such, it would be best if we keep things private for now. In that light, it would certainly be best if all towns could refrain from discussing the issue in public meetings until we get further along. With what you know, do you think that's possible? Mayor Reich replied, I think the mayors will be discreet at this time in handling the agreement. Our attorney has suggested that we could discuss it in executive session if we add a confidentiality clause to the agreement, presumably meaning confidentiality while it is being discussed and negotiated. I'm going to see him this morning, and I will ask him for draft language, as I think we would all prefer to discuss in executive session with our councils when we get to that point. Hope this update is helpful. Here is my point. What was going on behind the scenes, and I wasn't at that point, they stopped having these types of meetings, even in the non-public meetings that they were holding. In April, in our very last meeting, there was a discussion after the meeting concluded, after all of the minutes were closed and the recording was stopped, about what people were doing. Were they getting these requests, FOIA requests, and how were they responding? And there was a comment made that we are not a public body. I said at that meeting, and I say it again today, I told them, we are a public body. FOIA is applicable to all of us. I told you that 2 years ago. I tell you that again today. And you need to respond and provide this information. Thereafter, there was a complaint filed by Mr. Bintz. I was given a copy of it by then acting president. No one then convened a meeting to discuss strategy or response. Attorney was hired without a meeting to discuss how it was going to be responded to. I sent several emails. Actually, it was the week my father passed away. I sent several emails asking where the draft was for our response, and got it on the day that it was due, and then formulated my own response. Here is the issue. I think that the request to disengage is an attempt not to respond to what the DOJ has asked this body to do. The DOJ has asked this body and recommended that this body go back to those meetings that were held in violation of FOIA, and to create minutes and to create public confirmation of what occurred. I think at the very least, if this body decides to dissolve, they owe a duty to their affirmation of oath that they took as individual mayors, a duty that they took to engage and to protect the laws of the state, to create those minutes. There is a wealth of documentation I have now seen. There is no doubt in my mind that those minutes could be recreated in terms of the various meetings that the ACT mayors were having with US Wind. And I think that the public should be permitted to see those. I know there is a lot of anger at me, and I'm okay with that, because at the end of the day, I did what I thought was right. I am not a politician. I am not doing this for personal gain. I am a volunteer, but I sit in a position in which I owe an obligation to the citizens of my town and frankly, the citizens of the state of Delaware to let people know what is happening. I took that oath when I took on the responsibility as mayor. I continue that oath when I come in here and served as ACT. The Boehm report, which I have here, is this thick. This is the environmental impact statement that's for Boehm. Everyone should read it. I've read it 4 times now. When you read it, what you see is that it acknowledges that there is going to be a devastating environmental impact to our coastal communities. It acknowledges that there is going to be an economic negative impact to our tourism. In fact, now that I've seen the documents, some of the early drafts of the community benefits package that were in the document show that there was an acknowledgement that there's going to be a negative effect on tourism. The folks that were negotiating that contract, and I don't know whether it came from US Wind or came from the ACT mayors because it's not documented, shows that they're acknowledging that these payments are to pay back what is going to be expected damages. There's an issue regarding our public safety. We have drones that are flying over New Jersey. They were flying over Langley at the beginning of the year. We don't know where they're coming from. Do we want to put in wind farms along our coast here in Delaware in which it acknowledges in this report that it's going to impact both the sonar and radar capabilities to protect our citizens? Do we want the 3 R's cable to be a target for warfare, either military or terrorism? Is that something that we want to endorse? And we can dissolve ACT. And that's fine. You know, if that's your vote, I will be outvoted because I am not going to vote to dissolve ACT because I think ACT does serve a useful purpose. But I think the leaders of ACT put us on a course that was wrong. And instead of being mad at me, instead of being mad at anybody who comes in and says this isn't right, they should be mad at themselves because they owed a duty to tell the people that live here, that own property here, that work here, that require economic benefits from the tourism industry, the folks that live inland, the folks that live in Seaford, the folks that live in Delmar, the folks that live all over Sussex County that rely on our economy that we put out through the tourism industry. They owe it to let them know if there's something bad about to happen. And there is something bad about to happen. So be mad at me. I'm okay with it. I can live with my conscience. I don't owe anything to anyone other than honesty. And that's what I'm doing here. Now, you've added in your report that you wanted to dissolve ACT and repay whatever's out there. I'd like to know what the legal bills were for the response to the DOJ, because it certainly wasn't a response that Fenwick Island endorsed. It wasn't something that I heard anybody vote on. And as I set forth very early on, I wanted Fenwick Island's dues separated from anything to do with this consultant that was going to be moving ACT forward to find a way to come up with an economic package. And I don't think Fenwick Island should have to pay for that at all. So I am not going to vote to dissolve ACT. I think it does a good benefit. I think the folks that were involved, based on my conversations with them, both formally and informally, knew exactly what was happening. And they chose to go that direction. And now they are bearing the brunt of public scrutiny saying, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me? So that's my statement, and that's how it appears and is within the agenda of the items. I would welcome everyone to take a look at these documents that have been produced. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I have a comment.
Only, go ahead, Edie, you go first.
Thanks. This is Mayor Don Darrow, South Bethany. This is my first ACT meeting. This is my first ACT meeting since becoming mayor of South Bethany. I'm not particularly interested in rehashing the past. I wasn't a part of the discussions in the past or any meetings. So I will defer to the other mayors and to our legal counsel on what we do about recreating any past minutes. But I can tell you that I am in favor of dissolving ACT going forward. And I think that it is the right move in order to consider the possibility of restarting the organization and formalizing and building it from the ground up. Formalizing, and yes, we are a public body. Yes, we may be a formal organization, but we do not have the requisite paperwork, 501c3 or 4, whatever it is, status. And if we want to continue some sort of organization where the coastal communities work together and collaborate on shared issues, which I really hope that we will, that we start from scratch and put all of this behind us. Because frankly, I'm not, I wasn't privy to anything that happened in the past, and I'm not interested in going back there. I'm interested in moving forward. So I would like to start with a clean slate and put together a better version of some sort of organization where the interested communities with shared interests and shared values are working together on behalf of our communities.
And I would move, just as a, within that issue, to have, if it's going to be dissolved, I would move that minutes be created for the meetings that were held confidentially before the group is dissolved. And I think it is easy because it's contained well within the records that I looked at. And that would be, I guess, the only member that's still here is Mayor Marike. I would ask her to do that. And that's my motion.
I didn't get a chance
Mayor,
to speak.
Bill Stevens.
This is Mayor Stevens
Go,
of
Bill.
Dewey Beach. I just want to make a few comments that I don't necessarily mean to refute or rebut comments made by Mayor Magdeburg. Dee Dee, like you said, Edie, like you said, how do we move forward, not backwards, which is, I think, the really way that we should. When I got into ACT and we started to move things forward and have conversations, most of those conversations were about beach replenishment, things that we can do. We would hear presentations by the Center of Inland Bays, et cetera. When the whole proposal from U.S. Wind came in, I believe, and this is my opinion, that ACT made the mistake of not posting that there might be an executive session to have these things of concern. Regarding Mayor Magdeburg's comment concerning her choice to not be part of the group to look to seek counsel to help guide on what to do. And while the contract with Bonnie Ram ended up as a part discussing benefits, none of the members felt like they had enough prior knowledge to go it alone. When Mayor Magdeburg decided not to participate, that action actually violated part of our charter, as it requires every member to partake equally. So that was one mistake we allowed, is to have that separate thing. It's also my recommendation, or my memory, that I felt, and again, feelings aren't necessarily law, that Mayor Magdeburg wanted to go her own separate way in case because of Fenwick obviously having a much more possible detriment to the wind farms from the viewshed than towns like Lewes or Rehoboth or even ours, because it's right there on their coast, that they didn't want to be bound by something which they might harm them even more. Now, that's how I recall it. Secondly, in regards to Mayor Meehan from Ocean City, I did tell you that I would have a conversation with him, and I asked you to ask him to call me. And Mayor Magdeburg, he never did. And so for you to accuse me of not doing something that you asked, or trying to be somewhat nefarious in any way, is an inappropriate accusation and statement. I do not have a recollection of you ever commenting that we were a public body. If any of these mayors and all of the mayors of ACT, purely ACT, all of them are volunteers. All of them are unpaid. All of them here are here to service our communities. And all of us, give up our time willingly. None of us ever intend to hurt our communities, never tend to dissuade or hide anything from them. There's nothing that can happen at ACT, any agreement, any thought process. Everything that we discussed still has to go through our individual town councils. There's nothing that ACT can do to bind or to hurt our members or community. And the right thing, if I could go back in time, I would have asked that we put things in executive session, because this was a contract negotiation, no different than a collective bargaining negotiation, which is subject to executive council. That's the only thing we did wrong, because we did not believe that we were a public body, nor did anybody ever suggest that we needed to follow those things. The recommendation on my side is to dissolve the charter and to reincorporate following articles of association and follow exactly the path that Delaware legal local government has, and have potentially the executive director potentially file annual tax returns, to have potentially additional participation, and to formalize what we're doing. With that being said, Mayor Bethany, I believe you have a motion. Was that Joni? Did you have a motion?
We have a motion to come
Or were
forward.
you stating your
It's coming.
opinion?
We haven't got to the motion yet.
Okay.
I think you have two motions.
Alright.
You have the motion to dissolve. You have my motion, which I guess would be in need of a second, for minutes to be produced prior to
Well,
the
that's not on the
dissolution.
agenda. So, I mean, we have a
Well,
motion.
that's part of my
I know
new business. So
well,
it's a motion
believe-
made. You can ignore it, but it's a motion made.
well, it has to be on the agenda to be, you can't just add new business.
And Mayor Magdenberger, those
Well,
those
a
are
motion.
the Attorney General's recommendations, right?
Yeah, recommendations.
Yes.
Last time I looked up the recommendation, it wasn't a mandate. It was just a recommended action if we felt that it was for this. They did recommend that we have a FOIA coordinator and an ability to have online FOIA requests, which, if this association does continue in a more formalized fashion, it will.
If the intent wasn't to harm the communities or to hide anything, I don't see why doing minutes now, even after the fact, would be a problem.
Are you accusing me of trying to harm my community?
No, I'm saying that was your comments, that you didn't intend to harm your community.
No,
I
that's not
take
what
you
you
at your,
said. If you said
no,
the intention,
I take you at your word, sir. I take you at your word. And if it's not designed to harm our communities, then I don't see the harm of creating minutes to detail these minutes that went on, or these meetings
no,
that went
Mayor,
on
Mayor,
with
you
US
basically
Wind.
said that we would find not that if we were not harming our communities, then we should do the minutes.
I said,
Did
if
you
your
not-
intent is not to harm your communities, as you've said, and I will take you at your word, there should be minutes produced on behalf of ACT for these meetings that went on out of the public scrutiny.
Mayor, if I might, your first motion needs a second. And if Mayor Magdenberger is wanting to add an amendment, her amendment would need a second also. So the first motion to dissolve needs a second. And if Mayor Magdenberger is suggesting an amendment to that motion, it needs a second from one of the mayors.
Okay.
We also
From a
need to allow,
procedural standpoint, hold on, Stan, 1 second. From a procedural standpoint, to make a motion of creating minutes and to dissolve the organization would then create a need for another meeting to approve those minutes, because the minutes that are not approved they cannot be recorded.
Well, that
So
can
we'll
be
have
done.
another meeting. I don't think there's any issue about having to close down shop as of December 31st. I think you could have a meeting in January to approve those minutes once they're produced.
Any other comments from the mayors? Going forward, I would have to, being a brand new mayor, I have not been involved in any of this. I look to go forward positively, working on the best interest of my community and my constituents, and do the best things we can in terms of whether it be beach replenishment, wetlands, waterways, what economic studies, who pays for what. I am just looking forward to the most positive ways possible going forward. And to me, that means we need to start over again. So my vote would be to dissolve and look to start over again.
I think for procedural, what Mr. Gravier was saying, that you would need to have a second. You have to have a motion. I assume that's the motion from Mr. Stevens, and there'd have to be a second to that motion. And then I've done an amendment, and there would have to be at least a call for a second. Somebody may choose not to second that motion, that minutes be produced before it's dissolved, if in fact that's how the vote
Right.
would be. So
Well,
I think for
that's-
procedural purposes, that's how it should move forward.
Absolutely.
Well, Mayor
But we
Magdeburg,
haven't
do you
had,
agree that if I make the motion and there is a second, then it goes to a vote, and if the vote doesn't pass, then there could be amendment?
No, because he actually, the way he set it up is that you did the motion, there was no second. And I then commented and added an amendment to the motion. So both of them are ripe for.
So yours is a motion, so
discussion
you're
and
waiting a
vote.
second to your motion.
Correct, as an amendment to yours.
Your amendment dies without a second.
I agree. It would die without a second, but there has to be a call for a second. If there's a failure to call for a second, so be it. Then everybody that's voting on it, then it dies for lack of a second.
do we want to have any public comment?
We would need to second my motion before that happens, Ron.
Okay. We're talking about a second.
The initial,
Okay,
You would call for a
Yeah,
second to
I
Mr.
understand.
Stevens' motion only, and then you would call for a second for my amendment to his motion.
okay, on Mr. Stevens'
Just,
Seconded,
motion, do we have a second?
second.
Okay.
and
And
restate your,
we're gonna
restate
do
your
both of these
motion.
simultaneously, I assume.
What's that?
We're going to do both of these simultaneously?
I would assume if there's not a second to my amendment to the
Okay.
motion, then that would die and the vote would be on Mr. Stevens.
Is there a
as written,
second?
my motion is to
Mayor.
dissolve the Association of Coastal Towns as of December 31st, 2024, and return the unused dues funds in equal portions to the 7 active member towns after all debts have been paid.
Okay,
Second,
we have a second.
And then my amendment to that motion is that minutes be produced before the dissolution, and that Fenwick's dues not go towards any payment of legal fees relating to the FOIA petition and response.
Do we have a second? Not hearing one, that would go away. Okay, is there any public discussion? Lady right here, please go to the podium, state your name and your address. 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. My name is Jen Pulaski. I reside at 32886 Reba Road in Millville. I am a resident of Millville, and I have been a property owner in Sussex County since 2008. I come before you today to express my disapproval in how ACT has concealed the offshore wind projects from local citizens, and to express my outrage that they continue to violate Freedom of Information Act laws. In May of 2024, the Delaware Attorney General found that the Association of Coastal Towns is a public body and as such is subject to Freedom of Information Act laws. The Association of Coastal Towns continues their attempts to conceal the scope of the operations and negotiations between the towns and offshore wind developers, both U.S. Wind and Ørsted, by voting to disband this organization. ACT will have you believe that they were approached by U.S. Wind by negotiating a community benefits agreement, but in a recent FOIA request with South Bethany, records were received from December 22nd, 23 that suggest ACT approached both the governor's office multiple times and U.S. Wind as early as December of 2020 about trying to start negotiations for payouts from offshore wind developers. In June of 2022, Tim Saxon, former South Bethany mayor, attempted to shield the Delaware Center for Inland Bays and discussion of the money the Center for the Inland Bays received from offshore wind developers by advising that it would be discussed during executive session. Attempts to conceal the project and negotiations with U.S. Wind have been documented as early as June of 2023. On June 29, 2023, the Delaware Development Manager Mike Dunmeyer for U.S. Wind emailed Mayor Reich and Tim Saxon, as far as I know, quote, as far as how information about discussions should become public and the timing of such, it would be best if we at least keep things private for now. In light, it would certainly be best if all towns could refrain from discussing the issue in public meetings until we get further along. With that, do you think that's possible? End quote. In June of 2023, Henlopen Acres Mayor Reich emailed U.S. Wind Development Manager Mike Dunmeyer and South Bethany Mayor Tim Saxon strategizing how they could get into executive session so that they could discuss it in executive session if we add a confidentiality clause to the agreement, presumably meaning confidentially while it is being discussed or negotiated. She goes on to say that she is going to their attorney that morning and will request that he draft language that they could discuss it in executive session. In November of 23, U.S. Wind resumed negotiations with ACT mayors Reich and Saxon. On 12/15/23, former South Bethany Mayor Tim Saxon emails Mike Dunmeyer and Joni Reich that they would like to meet with you to discuss the meeting we had with the mayors and provide some initial thoughts on how to move forward with the announcement. This is another example of ACT U.S. Wind subcommittee members working to manage the public disclosure and mitigate bad press that might be associated with the press release.
Your time is up.
Please state your name and address.
Mark Tingle, 38952 Bayfront Drive, Ocean View. You were comparing this to SCAT a while ago. What is the difference with their structure and yours now? Because I've never heard them having any problems whatsoever with their current structure.
I haven't either.
Yeah, I mean, now, why? I don't understand what you talk about. The mayor of Dewey is talking about how everything has to go to your councils and all that. Did your council authorize you to have SCAT negotiate with U.S. Wind? Act. Did you go to your council first and say, hey, we want to negotiate with U.S. Wind about the $100,000 a year that they want to pay all the towns?
Chair, this is Mayor Mills. This is not an inquisition. This is not a debate. It's to receive, receive comment.
You held out that ACT accounts to their council. Their town councils have to go back and vote. Did that happen first before you did this? Negotiated with U.S. Wind. What authorized you in these meetings that are supposedly secret meetings to negotiate with U.S. Wind? Did your council vote on that first?
I spoke to my council. My council was aware of what ACT was doing. And in fact, it wasn't anything that we have been advocating that if the federal government and the state government decided to erect or to allow offshore wind, we have been advocating as far back as 2019 that if there are any benefits provided to the state as a result of those offshore wind developments, of which we had nothing to do with the approval, that there would be those benefits would be shared with the coastal communities. That has not been a new position of ACT. It's been a position that ACT has taken as long as I've been involved in ACT.
Okay.
That's not new, and that we
But
put that in
you
writing
get the
to
gist of what I-
letters to the governor. It was
Yeah.
not something that was a new concept for us, but understandably, we appreciate how this is a very controversial, divisive issue, and the town of Fenwick Island has taken a very strong stance opposing it and not wanting to have anything to do with it, and that's why the mayor's respected that position and said, yes, if you do not want to be part of any of these discussions, if you don't want your dues to be part of it, we respected that and took them completely out of that involvement. But at the same time, none of the other town councils of Bethany Beach, South Bethany, Rehoboth Beach, Lewes, Dewey Beach, or Henlopen Acres has ever taken the same position that's been taken in Fenwick Island, and that's their prerogative. They have not taken the same position opposing offshore wind, and that's their decision to make.
But he's holding out that everything you guys do, your council has to approve.
Ultimately, any agreement that came out of this, and I would echo the statement, this is really not supposed to be a back and forth, but any agreement that would come out of these discussions that was presented to the town councils at least one time already, and if it was ever going to be acted upon, it would be their decision. And they could take anything they want in that proposal and change it.
So
That's the point.
As
It was up
mayor
to them.
on ACT, you did not have to have your council's approval before you began negotiations on a legal contract. I can't understand for the life of me why ACT would need executive session for anything. I mean, it's for legal issues and for hiring. You said you have a shoestring budget, no employees, and what legal issues would you have? So I don't understand how you would ever have executive session.
Thank you. Please state your name and address.
Tom Fowler, 303B, Bethany Beach, or 303B Azalea Court, Bethany Beach, Delaware. So you guys are deciding whether to break up or stay. Frankly, I think you should stay. That would be a little more open and make your process open, just like the Attorney General said. If you break up and you reform, will you become a private organization? Will we be able to know what's going on? And you could still resume your talks with U.S. Wind, and we wouldn't know anything. Not that we know anything now,
But
but
if we reinvented ourselves, we would have to comply with all the requirements.
Including having a
A FOIA.
FOIA coordinator.
you'd
Yeah.
you'd take minutes. You'd be
Yes,
able to
certainly.
FOIA requests if you okay. Secondly, I know ACTS was, basically so you guys could all get together and discuss problems with the beaches and things of that nature. You could stay together now and just say, we are not discussing anything with the wind. It is up to the individual towns, which is what it should be anyways. If Bethany wants to support U.S. Wind, that's their call. Let the citizens decide and we'll tell you what we think. Why are you grouping together? If U.S. Wind wants to give Bethany a better deal, then that's U.S. Wind's problem. I don't understand. And frankly, I don't even know what Lewes is doing in it. They're up there on the Delaware Bay. So, the whole thing seems rigged, and I'm glad Fenwick dropped out. And I know Lewes has been a little bit on the edge there. And just since everybody gets to throw in their 2 cents, we're discussing this whole stupid landing because of Maryland banned the landing on Assateague Island. So that should tell you everything you need to know right there. So we're going to throw it in Delaware's face. Maryland mandates U.S. Wind, mandates it. But then they don't want it in their backyard, so we get to put it in our backyard, and people are falling over themselves for it. I don't understand it. It's asinine. So I think you should stay together for the public good, produce the records, just come legit and go like that, or swear, whatever. No more U.S. Wind discussions. Leave it up to individual towns. That way the public knows what's going on, because you would have to post it for your meetings for your individual towns.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have anybody else? Please. Please state your name.
Good afternoon. I'm David Thomas, 1 Reed Avenue, Dewey Beach, Delaware. I have supported the concept of the Association of Coastal Towns for many years. In Dewey, it was 15 plus years ago, there was a resolution or an ordinance that's one sentence long saying that they would join. I've always thought that that was a worthy concept. Dewey is postage stamp small, like a number of these other coastal towns, and it makes a lot of sense to collaborate. I attended the resiliency workshop that's item number 5 on today's agenda, and I thought that was productive and beneficial. So I hope in some form you'll proceed and go ahead. The last speaker has influenced me today, and I'm glad that I came here. I learned a number of things. I think you should carry on in your present form. And so I took his remarks to heart. Thank you. It strikes me today 3 things. The first of which that dovetails with that last thought is, you know, I've never read the charter of the Association of Coastal Towns. So there's a proposal now to dissolve a charter that I've never had an opportunity to read. So while I've been very supportive of the concept, I can't say what the practices or procedures have been. Knowing what the minutes, only 6 months worth, that sounds worthwhile. And I'm impressed by the size of that loose leaf and the other materials. I joke with my family that I should have a 12-step program about reading. I'm an avid reader. I hope that Mayor Mattisberger will invite me to Fenwick and I can read that thick loose leaf. So all of that would be, I think, wholesome and productive in moving forward. So I think you should take to heart what the Attorney General found and move forward as you are. I say that, reminding you, however, I've never read your charter, so I don't know, a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, I am seeing that we've had a motion and a second.
You need to look at if there's anyone online, Ron.
Oh. Okay, do we have somebody? Okay, can you bring him forward?
Okay, do you have Ed Benz up? Is that, am I on now? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you, Mr.
Oh,
Benz.
okay, so Ed Benz, 302 North Ocean Drive, South Bethany. I didn't realize it wasn't on the agenda, so I didn't realize it was going to be a comment period here. So my thought's going to be maybe a little bit scattered, but I have thought about it. Obviously I was the one who filed the petition, and I'm a little surprised about some of the discussion here. I think you need to reread the opinion letter. It sounds like some of you have, but maybe not everybody. It didn't raise questions. It made recommendations, which Mayor Fenwick has pointed out, and others, and they, kind of given short shrift today. It seemed to me that a lot of respect should be due to the Attorney General's office, and that there would be a point-by-point careful evaluation of what was recommended and why or why not it's something that should be followed. The opinion also didn't say anything about reforming. I quite frankly, I don't see a need to reform, and I'd be open to hearing why a 50C3, forming a 50C3 would be just seems to add a lot of complexity. You got to file annual reports, you got to file an application with the IRS. You're smart folks here. It seems to me it'd be not all that difficult to comply with FOIA. Websites are cheap. You could use the host town as the as the body to handle FOIA requests on a rotating basis. It doesn't seem that difficult. I'd be happy to, help out on that. It doesn't seem like a big deal to me. The the comments about executive session, executive session just isn't that broad in the FOIA area. So, it sounded almost wistful about the way ACT used to act or had conducted itself, but there was a lack of accountability. I mean, you very clearly negotiated a deal with US Wind. Decisions were made, and then they were brought to the towns as a negotiated deal. And it wasn't done in a forthright way. I mean, in December of 2023, the ACT mayor signed off on a press release by US Wind in which it said, US Wind is initiating discussions with the coastal towns. That's pretty misleading in my book. And there are other things that, you wrapped up negotiation of the community benefits agreement, and that wasn't disclosed. That's a decision. So I do think minutes should be formulated. One of the recommendations was that there'd be a discussion of any decisions, at a subsequent ACT meeting of topics discussed or decisions made at these prior ACT meetings that were out of compliance. To go back to this not being on the agenda today, I don't think this is a FOIA compliant meeting. I spent 5 minutes last night, and I found on the Attorney General's website, this is an opinion from Attorney General opinion from June 2024 to the concerned citizens of Rehoboth Beach, and I'll read from it here. It says a public comment period is a major issue for discussion, and citizens must receive public notice of their opportunity for public comment so that they can decide whether they wish to attend the meeting. As I said, I didn't know there was going to be a comment period here, and I don't think this is a compliant meeting because you didn't list on your agenda that there would be, or when it would be, the opportunity for public comment. So there may be people who looked at this and said, well, I don't need to listen to these guys. I don't want to comment. There's no opportunity. So under this opinion letter here, and I'll give you the number and you guys can have your lawyers look at it. It's June 26, 2024, and it's Attorney General Opinion 24-IB26. So I think you're going to have to come back and have another meeting if you want to go over and talk about and vote on dissolution of the organization. As I said, I don't see a need for
Mr.
it.
Benz, your time is up.
Yeah, well, I think I have some important things to say here. I would think you could maybe make an exception given my historic role in this. It's amazing to me that you still haven't updated people about the status of this community benefits agreement. Towns have really done nothing.
We've exceeded.
I'd ask that he be permitted to finish his statement. I think it's a matter of discretion for the chair, and I would ask that he be able to speak and finish his statement. He is the one that filed the petition that brought this to light.
Go ahead.
Mr. Benz, you may finish your statements.
Are you there?
I was muted by you guys. I listened last January to the Bethany Beach and South Bethany meetings, and also one in Dewey. I don't know whether it was January, maybe a little bit after that. And the public sentiment was overwhelmingly against this community benefits agreement. And then after that, there was just complete radio silence. Nothing was done on this at the towns, and it's particularly important to. It's not, Fenwick's and is closer to it, but Bethany Beach and South Bethany are pretty darn close too. And there's just complete radio silence on it. And I don't understand why there was no further discussion on this. And it just doesn't seem like people are being, the towns and ACT were upfront with this, with people. And, it's troubling to me. And I think you need to have another meeting on this. I think legally you have to have another meeting on this, and you need to expand the agenda to hit some of these items. Not to have addressed the status of the community benefits agreement before wrapping up is beyond me. Thank you.
One comment I would have is I believe it was discussed. There were open public hearings. at every town, and it was discussed. I believe most towns tabled it. And I'd be surprised if it comes back up, but we would see.
Well, the de facto, you gave US Wind what it wanted.
Okay, any other comments?
Oh, I will say, you know, I will file another petition and, you know, you can voluntarily have another meeting, a compliant meeting, and maybe you can let me know, or I file another petition that this is an invalid meeting, and I'm confident that that is the case. As I said, I gave you the site for the recent Attorney General opinion.
Thank you. Okay, is there any others online? Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Pat Resnick, and I'm going to be short. I just wanted to.
What, can you just state your address, please?
Oh, I'm at the 482 Bethany Loop at the Salt Pond. And my concern mostly, aside from all the others that, you know, fish coming up on, is that from what I understand, the contract's going to be 20 years long, and then from what I understand afterwards, those windmills, they rust, and who's taking care of it after that time? Are we going to be responsible to do that, or will we be bringing in other people to take care of those windmills, or are they going to be like other places that just rust and break and they're just out there? That's it.
Thank you. I mean, just one comment relative to, and it's not even on the agenda, is the community benefits package is, and the windmills, where the towns as such don't have a say. The votes, you should be going to Boehm, you should be going to the state. There's the places, they're making the decisions. They're the places you should be talking to, not here. Our vote means nothing here. So, and I believe there are several lawsuits out there presently that are put out. So.
Yeah, Tuesday.
Okay, well. Okay, thank you. Okay, that just an aside. To proceed, we've already had a motion and a second. Do all those in favor, please say aye, or let's raise hands so I can see. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we have 4 and 5. Okay. We have 5 in favor, so the motion passes.
And I vote negative, just for the record. Mayor of Fenwick Island, Natalie Magdeburger.
Okay. Okay, that's the last item we have on the agenda today. Do we have a motion for an adjournment?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for attending. And for those listening online, have a wonderful holiday.
Thank you.